What is this software?
OBS, it's like a streaming software.
Yeah, it's this one that Matthew downloaded yesterday.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're not going to be in it though, are we? Maybe that is good, yeah.
Thanks for coming again. We'll start right on the dot, just for a change. So yeah, thank you for coming. Welcome to the 4th edition of LeicesterJS. We're back into 2019 now, so yes, we appreciate you all sticking with us, and you can see quite a few regular faces as well, which is good. So yeah, as always, we're monthly on the 3rd, apart from next month. I'll get to that in a minute. If you've got any feedback or anything like that, go on our GitHub and give them feedback about the talks or any of the slides or anything about the event or venue. We'd really appreciate the feedback because we're constantly trying to improve, and if you've got any suggestions, then they'd be welcome. All the intro slides as well as the speaker slides are also available on LeicesterJS/talks on GitHub as well. That's the Slack with the brand new Slack logo, duck logo, or the swastika.
Wrap it up, babe.
Name that is. The Cloud Call guest password has changed as well, so if you haven't got it, go for it. Also follow us on Twitter, and we are going to start doing some competitions for sort of best tweet with like a caption photo. So if you want to submit your entries, we haven't got anything to give you away yet, but we will do for the next meetup. Also, a little bit of a announcement. There's a massive data breach that happened about a day ago. If you're not registered on haveibeenpwned.com, a great title, then I'd highly recommend doing so. You, in all likelihood, your email address will have been found in some data breaches or your password. So
May have got an email yesterday.
Yeah. If you're not registered, then go for it. Pizza and stuff will be available soon. They'll be coming at 7:30. Drinks are down here, and also if you want water or coffee or anything like that, that's in the kitchen. Feel free to help yourself. We've also got the fire exit back here to my left, and the bathrooms are back out where you came and to the left on that wall there. If you're a bit stuck, come and ask me, or ask someone who might have been to the meetup before, or Cloud Call people if you just want to put your hands up. There they are, and me, of course, I'm Mark. Just come and ask us and we'll point you in the right direction. We are obviously also sponsored by Cloud Call because we're at the Cloud Call office, and they pay for all the food and stuff like that. So if you are looking for any work or anything, check them out.
Any work?
Yes, next time is going to be on the 28th. The reason for that is we've got a big company meeting the previous week on a Thursday, and the previous week before that is Valentine's Day. So we were really left with either the first week in February or the last. I chose the last. Hopefully that works for everyone. I've put the meetup onto meetup.com again for a change in advance. We haven't got confirmed speakers for that event, so if you are looking to speak, we encourage first-time speakers or also people with minority backgrounds and things like that, which would be great for you to talk. So file an issue on GitHub, and we'll be able to come back to you with a talk proposal. And now, over to Mark.
That's the job today.
Okay, so yeah, my name's Mark Ackroyd. I'm the development director here at Cloud Call. I look after quite a talented and varied range of developers in the UK office and Belarus. Got about 32 developers in all with a range of different skill sets. And I don't know if anybody was here, but last time I was here, I talked about some of the changes and some of the sort of insights really about what I look for in developers and some of the passions and things that developers sort of come to. And basically, when a developer comes to work for Cloud Call, some of the qualities you look at. Because technology changes so quickly, it's very difficult to pin that a developer down to a specific skill set, a particular technology, because it changes all the time. So there's a particular set of attributes and things that you look for in good developers. I talked a little bit about some of the insights and everything around that. So for the second talk, I thought I'd talk about something a little bit more technical, and I've got some coding things, and I'm going to attempt to build a little iOS app, right, while we're in the talk in the next 30 minutes. Right, so I'm going to embarrass myself massively if it doesn't work. Okay, so last time I talked about JavaScript everywhere, and let's face it, it is. Right, you can use it in the web, on the server, and mobile, and on the desktop. Loads of frameworks. I'm sure Dave is might talk about one of the little frameworks I saw to do the embedded stuff later on today. But I found a really neat little Jerry script type embedded library and everything like that to aid with some of the embedded stuff. Might come up with Dave, I don't know. But the point being is JavaScript. Let's face it, it's absolutely everywhere. Can anybody recognise some of these? Does anybody recognise any of these? What's that one?
Like Electron?
Yeah, Electron. Does anybody know what that one is?
Yeah, that's the Facebook one.
No.
MW it's called.
Oh yeah.
Desktop one. That's the native React Native is the one that Facebook uses, which is more
I
mobile.
was thinking something.
Yeah,
They're like
there's loads of frameworks, right? There's loads of ways and things that people have made to make it easier for you to put JavaScript on practically anything. And what I'm going to do, or attempt to do today, is take a fairly simple JavaScript application that I've done and put it on an iOS device and put it on there natively using something called Swift. For those who don't know, Swift is Apple's new language that's kind of like an amalgamation. It's a compiled language, but they've taken a lot of modern sort of techniques like generics and things and ploughed it into a compiled language. And I'm a bit of a fan of the language. It's quite cool. It's very, very different from JavaScript in terms of the execution and bits and pieces, but it's a nice language. And if you want to do iOS development, right, or macOS development, it's a really good language to get into. But this isn't about Swift. This is about JavaScript. So I want to have a look at how you can do a JavaScript application, put it into a native iOS device, and then get some little bits and pieces working with it so you can kind of talk to it. Okay, well, why would you want to do that? So let's just talk a little bit about frameworks and how they kind of work. So you've got your hardware, your native sort of toolkit, and all these frameworks that work on JavaScript usually implement a web view. So they take a cut down version of a web page, a cut down view of an internet browser, and put it into a component, right, that you can drop into your app. Okay, why would you want to do that? It basically gives you an entire engine capable of rendering HTTP, rendering HTTP addresses, rendering HTML, and interpreting JavaScript, all within a blockable bit of code that you can just drop into a native application. And then all of a sudden, it's sprung up a whole ecosystem of people that build frameworks that allow to sit on top of that and make it feel native. So if you go to the App Store on your mobile device, pull up half a dozen games, applications and things, you usually find that they're written using these frameworks, using JavaScript, right? And that's a really cool thing to do, because it basically means that you can write your stuff and it's used everywhere, including an iOS device. So, talking about some of the common frameworks, one of the very, very early ones was something called PhoneGap. And then Ionic, which is kind of like all based off Cordova, which is it's basically just an Angular framework. And that was one of the first ones that came out. It's very, very mature. There's lots of user bases behind it, and it's okay, it's a little bit old now, but it's a very mature framework for you to take a mobile application and drop it onto your iOS device. And there's some other frameworks as well I just want to mention. There's React Native that Facebook use quite heavily. A lot of the Facebook app is written using these sorts of frameworks. And Google have entered the scene. Flutter is fairly new, and again, Google are getting in on the act because they've done a framework that basically allows you to build some very nice native looking applications in JavaScript using a very markup language. Hello, welcome.
No, sorry.
And you can basically take some really quite cool little JavaScript things, drop it into a native app and build it with Flutter. The beauty about these frameworks is they do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So what I'm going to attempt to do, quite badly possibly in a second, is do it from scratch. So I'm not using a framework. I'm literally just going to fire up the Mac editor, and I'm just going to attempt to open up a web view, call in a web page, and get some little interactivity and everything going with it, right? Which is quite cool. So if you want to do it a lot easier, I recommend to check out some of these frameworks. Really just Google search mobile frameworks, HTML, JavaScript, and you'll get a whole list of them, and you'll spend the next 6 months saying, I like that one, I don't like this one's really cool, that one's really cool, and get into all sorts of developer flame wars, right, and hopefully get your opinions well known across the industry, etc. So there's loads of frameworks out together. In researching this sort of talk, I sat and looked at literally hundreds of them, and they're springing up all over the time. So things. I'm assuming that everybody's heard of a framework like this. There's lots of nods. Who's used React Native? Yay, we've got some hands. Who's used Flutter? Yeah, there you go. So, who's even heard of Flutter until today? Yay. Cool. So there's plenty of frameworks out there. Right. I'm particularly attached to a framework, and the reason why I'm quite attached to it is the guy that wrote it has been a friend of mine for nearly 30 years now. Yeah, about 28 years. I was best man at his wedding. And he is responsible for a framework called Phaser, which is probably one of the most starred projects on GitHub these days. And Phaser is an HTML framework for making games built with JavaScript, right? And it's a very, very cool framework. He does lots of games and gets involved with all sorts of projects with the likes of Disney, the BBC, etc., etc. And he's written this framework he was a Flash developer and kind of learnt the error of his ways and moved over to JavaScript, and he's built this amazing framework that's got a massive following behind it, and he's doing really, really well out of it. So that's really cool. And I'm a big fan of this framework because I've used it quite a bit, and it's quite fun to build little platform games in JavaScript and everything like that. So, yeah, who's heard of that before? Yay, loads of people. Good. Have I mentioned it before? Yeah? No? Shaking head? Have I mentioned it before? No? No. Okay. So, demo. Right, this is where I'm going to attempt to embarrass myself. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I've got a very, very simple little web application. You're not connected to internet. This is where it just was going to go completely wrong. Why am I not connected to internet?
Live coding always goes wrong.
Yeah. Why am I not connected to internet? Of course I'm connected to internet. Well, it's going to disappear.
I'm still a guest.
You need to try Chrome instead.
Who's some guest?
Still.
You try Chrome.
Yeah.
Right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so this is a very, very simple little JavaScript application that just puts out a load of bobs and just does a sine wave thing to them. It's nothing particularly complicated. It's written in JavaScript using the Phaser framework, and I can publish up the source code with some comments and things like that if anybody's interested in looking at that. But the aim of today's exercise is I've just written this fantastic game, and I want to put it on the App Store. Why do I want to put it on the App Store? Because I want to sell it and make $1 million and retire, and the usual sort of dreams that every developer has, that I've got a great idea, I've built a great application, now I'm going to go sell it, and I'm going to retire and buy an island in the Bahamas. Right, so how do you do that? So, what I'm going to do is fire up my trusty text code editor, and I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to create a single view application. I'm going to call it LeicesterJS1. Yep. And that's where it wants to create it. And hey presto. Sit there and think about that for a second. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I don't want a launch screen, so I'm just going to get rid of that and delete the launch screen. Is that horrible? Well enough, yeah. Okay. Second thing I've got to do is there is a very, very stupid little dictionary key that you need to put into the project so that it talks out to the network. So I'm just going to do that very quickly. And hey presto. So. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is, you see I put it in presentation mode. Look at that, 4. Next thing I'm going to do is just drop some code in there and just very quickly talk you through what this is doing. Okay, because it's literally just that. So this is where I'm going to embarrass myself with that code. Okay, so all that's doing is in Swift, importing the various components that I need to render a WebKit view. I'm telling the view controller that I want it to bind to various events that the web view is going to give me. I'm creating a web view variable and I'm loading some standard sort of configuration options and then binding it to the view that it has. Once the view is loaded, I'm going to go out to that URL, grab it and load it on the actual web page itself. I'll come back to what this is doing in a second, right? But with a bit of luck, and this is where I have a bit embarrassed myself, if I run that on my little simulator, it compiles, yay! Right, and launches my little application. Well, it thinks about it. Oh, ran the wrong way.
Command L.
Command L. There you go. That'll do. Command L. So what that's done is grabbed created a web view. It doesn't put it that way. Come on, go that way. Very good. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to sit there like that while it's doing it. Anytime today. Was that Command L? That's the last time I take advice from you. That's better. So that is basically our little program spinning away. So talking through very briefly again, load the view. When the view loads, go and grab your web page, right, and display it on the screen. And hey presto, that's what you get. Now, the beauty about writing it in this way is the phone has got all sorts of different mechanisms like the accelerometer and everything like that to allow you to interact with it. Now, a lot of the frameworks will allow you to grab those events and feed them into your app, and you can detect all that stuff within JavaScript. It has its limitations, obviously, because there's nothing like going natively to get some of these events. And when you're doing some of the games development, some of the very responsive stuff, there's no better way of doing it than natively. However, there's a lot of the abstraction, and some of the frameworks will take a lot of that interactivity and do it for you. Cool to do something wonderful. So the idea being that if you had something like Apple Pay or some sort of an event that happened externally, that you can inject some JavaScript, etc., into your application and get it to do something as a result of that. So what I want to do is I'm going to Bind, because I've attached all these events at the top. What I'm going to do is bind myself to a motion event, and I'm going to detect if the phone has been shaken, and then I'm going to send some JavaScript into the actual application, right? And then here is a little function just to very hackily put that, inject that particular JavaScript into the web view as it happens. So if I take this and compile it on my phone, which I shall plug in right now. Alright. Build succeeded, copying. This is where we all sit and look at installing for screens. LeicesterJS 1. So we have the application running on my device. So that's a native iOS application that's loaded that website and loaded it on there. Now I've bind the little JavaScript thing to the shake event. So hopefully when I shake it, what it's going to do is inject just draw 2 equals true into there and do some nice effect. Yay, it's done it. So it's taken it and drawn another one on top of that. Right? And just to show you what that was doing on the website version, so here's my website version. If I go into the console and fire that up, and on here, if I type in draw 2 equal true, bang, it comes in another copy in there. So that's taken a shake event, right, and injected the JavaScript into the web page, and the web page is responding accordingly. So, you know, at the end of the day, that's what, 50 lines of code. Happy core development director who doesn't do it professionally anymore code, but the principle still stands that I've taken a web page JavaScript. I've embedded it into an iOS application, and I've got it to respond to events. So if you take those core principles, right, the next time you come up with a really cool little JavaScript application and say, well, you know, I'd like to get people to buy this, Apple Pay or whatever, right? You can use these sorts of frameworks and these sorts of techniques, drop it onto a phone, and use the frameworks like this to monetize it. And you can go and buy your island. So there. So there you go. So that wasn't a complete disaster. I didn't embarrass myself too much, I hope. So have we got? Any questions? Go for it.
I'm going to be a pain. The Apple guidelines, I believe, state, although they have been broken by Slack actually, that you can't just inject JavaScript into a page and then have that propagate onto users' apps and things like that. How do these frameworks and what you were demonstrating there help solve that problem?
The API to evaluate and inject JavaScript into that thing is a public API. So if they haven't done it, well, they're disallowing it that way, then Apple have published an API that allow you to do it. Right, so it's there, it's to be used. I did it there. And very similar frameworks exist, and you're going to do it on Android devices and things. You can use the same APIs to get data in and out of JavaScript and query exactly what that engine is doing. The reason why I got sort of interested in doing this is I wrote a Macintosh application that's a thing. So Cloud Call makes a plugin that we use that's written in Angular. So I took that Angular code, dropped it into a native application, and it uses things like local storage and all sorts of cookies and various bits and pieces all under the hood to work. And I dropped it into a native application, and I got things like protocol handlers to look in. So on your operating system, you know, when you've got HTTP : it knows to fire up a web browser. If you put tel : / it knows to open a phone call, or if it's a telephone number. You basically write the application to respond to those events, and I got those events and injected it into the JavaScript to get the Angular app to work and respond to that as a way of doing it. And these are published APIs. So I don't know why they didn't allow it, but they got a public API that allows you to do it. So don't know is the honest answer. So
I have the boring answer for the job. So yeah, the rules say that you can't do it, but you can, as long as it doesn't substantially change the behaviour of your application. So if you wrote like a phishing game and you injected JavaScript into it that turned it into a fire grenades at puppies game, then that wouldn't be allowed. But if the phishing game is written in JavaScript, then that's fine. It's literally a sub heading under the.
Yeah. There you go. Much better answer than mine. Thank you.
What's then to stop you using the same concept to embed, say, a link to a banking website in there, publish, well, obviously the iOS store is locked down, but publish that, and then inject malicious JavaScript to swap out password field for your own input? I don't want to do that.
We're going to have that island quickly.
Exactly the same reason, I would presume. The beauty about it is what I did there, although I was looking at a public website that I was doing, that's run on my Aki.com server. You can take all the JavaScript stuff and put it all embedded and have it run from the file system, so it's entirely encapsulated. Okay. And you can lock it down. You remember that little thing that I cut and paste into the security settings? That was basically to allow it to talk outside of its own little bubble. Right? It's just a little thing that you have to do. When you're doing a native app on an Apple, you've got something called your sandbox settings. So you can set your sandbox to define exactly how that app is going to behave, whether you allow it to talk it out, accepting connections, etc., etc. So you're right. There's nothing stopping you, but it's down to the developer writing the app to do it. There's all sorts of controls and things in place to stop people externally doing it, right? Which I hope answers your question. Yeah. Any other questions?
It's basically up to the developer of the banking app that you can't talk to.
Is this who's looked at or seen this technique used before, or looked at frameworks and things like that? Go ahead back, yeah. So apologies, this is all not new to you. So.
It was interesting.
That's the menu, so that's not bad. So yeah, any questions? Just come and grab me little things. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. I believe we have 1 minute if Domino's is on time, which they never are, until we have pizza. So yeah, if you just want to talk amongst yourselves, and we'll be back with the next talk after pizza's cooked. So yeah, thank you very much.
I think that's what they were getting. Yeah, I sent them a message earlier. Oh, that's cool. That's why you want to stick it.
You're in charge now.
$1 million idea. Yeah, he said he's got some ideas. So that's pretty cool. You can do it much easier. You can do it on the right hand side. You're talking about the dragon. Yeah. What you mentioned, dragon. I can't remember what they call it. It's basically the XML layout shit.
No, WebView, that's the name of it. Yeah. We usually where you get your screen, you can basically go to like a visual editor.
Yeah, that generates an XML. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I know what you mean.
What you can do on the click on that option, you can, for example, embed some API that sits on top of it. So, for example, if you like for this web view expose some variables or some objects with some functions, you can do it.
And my last paper used something similar. That question over there was funny because we actually did did that, not with the banking website, but we had like an OAuth login, and the iOS developer was like taking the usernames from the fields that you shouldn't have access to, and like saving it in the database so we could use it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Apple brought in guidelines so that you can't do that anymore.
And did that go
We had to change because it was a private application, so it wasn't on the App Store. But I think
because when it goes through the App Store, it's a very, very strict like, checking procedure.
Yeah, but I don't think they let you like overlay stuff on web views anymore and things, so you couldn't like overlay a text input. So you tap on it and then you get like, oh, I'm tapped on the native rather than the web pages one and stuff like that. I remember a sketch.
I think this I slightly disagree that he mentioned Flutter or something things to work on the top.
And he had phone gap and React Native on the same level on a web view, and I was like,
Like, there was a very cool slide where it was displayed like hardware, like low-level programming, and then blah blah blah. This web view layer doesn't exist on
not Flutter or React Native. I went to
not spread engagement.
Yeah.
So pretty much
Carry on. I wasn't listening.
It's exactly the same.
Phone gap, they call it hybrid,
It's essentially
Phone gap is what he just built. Like phone gap, you can listen to like all sorts of events to like trigger the camera to open, and then when it closes, you get like the image data. Ionic's a UI framework for web.
Ionic is. Ionic comes with tons of templates.
Yeah.
Ionic comes with tons of templates. Yeah, it is a web.
I think when you install Ionic, it gives you phone gap upstream.
Oh, possibly.
So you run like Ionic as a command, but it basically just passes through to phone gap at the end of the day. So you can do like Ionic run the gap and it runs phone gap. Oh, I don't know the order.
Or other way around.
They could have been. So one's owned by Adobe and one's open source, I think. Phone Gap's the original, so I think it was Phone Gap, and then Adobe bought it and might have been like, hey, let's run those. They're basically the same thing.
So like all those layers to show you
Yeah, kind of.
Like when I asked them, like, what would you like to do it up on and so on, so that like
Yeah, performance used to be a massive problem on phone gaps, like iOS 3, well not iOS 3, iPhone 3 days and stuff like that. Yeah, so they got there. I'm not eating it. I've been like wasted on the floor. Like, first coming.
exactly. Hopefully they're gonna have one for the first festival. They had one.
Oh, they had, yeah, margarita.
Yeah, I'm happy with that because I have not eaten since the 5 days. But to be honest, man, I didn't like the 5 days thing.
Because you didn't have any meat.
I had loads of meat, so my stomach was so bloated. I've got like so much food potatoes right now. I'm sorry. No, everything for you. Everything for you. Today's your day.
Primary school, near Market Harbour. Yeah, used to be a village for Kibble. Used to be a village for Kibble.
I know Steve Campbell.
And now, I work for to do jobs quite a lot of it. Yeah, so we were just really doing jobs and like React. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
I can, yeah.
I think they gave him
to reset.
but yeah, oh, maybe. I'm not seeing him around.
Hello.
Yeah, I don't get him. The emails also
So I always find out about this.
See it, my eyes, and then, okay, sorry, what do you mean that's when I had a laptop before, 15 years ago. When I read a story about a project with this project on my business project, that's the one I go to. Was it the worst one? No, it just carries on, so there's no live. I told you I went to the Christmas party, going live, anyway. No. There was a big well, I think they it was like 8 years. So they expect that all the final fight from them. Great. It was like, yeah, it was like 8 years. There was like 4,000 hours of development time. So basically the system was made to outsource it. So we, dressed up in Ukraine.
not closer to an airport when they're like getting in the sandbox.
So they're doing that basically stuff.
Yeah.
So we're giving them as a class.
You realise that's going to basically just see are they expensive?
But yeah, so that puts it bang on line with like Apollo Station.
And it will slip.
No, I'm not most of it is. We're going to go live at 100 quid. But we're going to roll it back.
Oh,
Most of them are going to go live 2 years ago. So basically, most of what they're doing. Yeah. So basically,
There's a version made live that doesn't make that way.
it was like touch.
Oh, maybe not.
Oh, it's so funny. It's
Well, I think they're developers. Do you ever meet Greg is but he was immediately sold. That's fine. He was never in my life. What they want today. He's like people's
So he's the populist motion and the real management are...
Sometimes we do when you're really shit.
The question is, on the next list like this, or like this?
Oh, we've got I want you to
Imagine what you could achieve if you didn't
Yeah. Not single-handedly, I'm sure they had a whole team. Well, yeah, 8 years. And the amount of money this is, I'm quite happy. I get quite happy next to living on a desert island with
Oh, sorry.
Nobody seems to
When we started out,
Yes, I do. Just over.
Oh, I'm trying to find something here. But he left some time ago, so you probably get So you weren't there when
I try and be as like unintrusive as possible. Yeah. I think that's just like a bad kind of yeah, I mean, obviously, I have to do that. I try and do it in a way that he's sort of agency. I just kind of genuinely ask them how they want to be contacted. I'm guessing it was Phil and thank you very much. I like having a lot of money to pay my bills and not being kind of given the nose and shouted at. Oh wow. Okay, so you're oh, okay. That's why you're in love. Yeah, it isn't happening. But the problem is, the way they're doing it now, part of it is look at that embedded status.
Yeah, so my magic, so the thing is about time flying. No, train line. So from my point of view,
this is very different.
It is.
So maybe hopefully it would be better organized, like on yeah, that's what it is. Something new architecture, probably small patches as well.
I mean, I've not done TypeScript, but when I see,
that's types and that's
yeah, I can help it, you know, and intuitively I can tell this may have to go there. I think we'll be fine on that. Very easy
It's fine.
it will be, but it's going to take time.
Yeah, I think for me, understanding Linux was the biggest thing. I mean, not understanding just like writing. Maybe just the concept, like very difficult to get. But once you get it, it's all pretty good.
You know, when I was learning Linux, I never had any of those ideas. Linux is hard. I had not heard it.
Yeah.
So I don't think before hearing Redux was hard. And when I was learning it, I thought it was very simple.
Each of them have got their own.
I think it's the mindset. People who Redux is hard. How will he thinks it's very absolutely right. I'm sure it's because people have been saying it. I didn't hear any of that before. Like, the concept's like clear.
Yeah, no, it's clear. I'm not sure what was the breaking point.
Now that you think about it, I'm not sure. So I think it's just the mindset. People think it's hard.
In about 20 years.
I mean, I like it too. PubSub is in every
A lot of Chinese
I'm not sure why. There's nothing wrong with them. Nothing wrong with them.
nothing is wrong with it.
I don't know, like people are trying to stupid these days, you know? And try to keep it mistakes.
I'm not sure what I think now what I'm going to try to do is use a few more of the React APIs that are coming out. To find the context, but they're very so lean now. So
It's like we migrated to like, we could have done it before. Like fragments, here and there. Have you used them? Have you used them?
And look at this one. The sales runner.
Yeah.
We have to put like responsible Redux, cookie patterns, and all of those.
Disconnected, that's promising.
I promise it won't disconnect you. No, I promise it won't disconnect you with the thing. If there's something you're looking for, you don't there's another bridge that you can ship on. Yeah,
nice that I'm going to
Chris, the kitchen is a fridge.
The ratio they have over there is, in my opinion, we have a big mess.
Right.
But the code is professional.
You think? I mean, some parts of it is pretty good, but I wouldn't say all of it.
I've not checked it with React boxes. I think the Redux boxes.
Okay, no, the Redux part is pretty good. In my opinion,
If you think about the cases they handle, I wouldn't think about that if I were doing it. Like, I believe it's the whole incremental, like checkout. So it's almost a faster executive for checkout.
yeah, which is good or bad thing. Because
Considering that to connect.
I think the issue is like, I think it's a ticket. People do what's in a ticket, or not do what yeah, exactly. Right? They might see this issue, and they'd be like, because it's not part of the ticket, and then you try and avoid it and make sure you get this fixed faster.
But I like it. I enjoy it.
No, I mean, it was definitely for me, even like, when you were like this city, you know, I was thinking, I didn't know what it was in the beginning, you know.
When I was home,
Two massive slices. I was about to say it's like Chromebook, but it's weird.
It's just designed to do like later or not
Forgotten what
an actual good.
Yeah. We're talking about office.
You start at junior level.
What was learned from
Teach you what you need to know.
No, learn what not to do.
What's not to do?
At the end, install recompose.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big fight between you two guys in a second.
So we're gonna install train.
Oh, they've got recompose.
No.
Did you?
Do they?
My man.
I made sure I used recompose in my last component just because it's going to be the last one I do. I was like, got to get it in there.
Make sure it's debuggable. Leave the console that rather than the console.
Come on, recompose is cool.
I like recompose better than
But I have to admit, we've got loads of components on our website where we use recompose just to create an abstraction around the one level. If you're doing more of this, higher order
Connect is not a good idea.
Yes. Enhance, connect, and translate, for example. You don't have to do it. Okay, it's still readable. Yeah. But if we're enhancing like more, okay, it's okay. But enhancing with a one component.
easy retain. Oh, enhancing.
Yeah, that's with a one, for example, with translate. So connect and translate only. I can get it.
Oh, you do? Okay. You just wrap it all into one.
Yeah. Translate group, connect group, and done.
I think it's okay.
Okay.
Did you just add like a loop around your function for no reason? Or a reduce around your function? Like enhance equals of the rootability. Read it. I think connect maps it to proximity component is pretty readable. I don't know. Like
Maybe.
So like you expect somebody to write.
I don't know. I'll have to.
Yeah.
if you've got 5 like high order components, feel free.
Yeah.
If you've got 1, then
Yeah.
it's
One you
wasted.
don't, one you don't do it.
Yeah.
One the other does. Like
2 I probably wouldn't.
So yeah, Dave's got a talk now on embedded JS. This one should be a really good one. He's got
Audi bot compose for 1.5.
not just software, we're also in hardware as well. So yeah, take it away.
Fantastic. Hello.
Hello.
Has anyone done anything with embedded JavaScript before I start? Fantastic. A little bit.
I've fired it up and had something else to do. So.
Right. Well, hopefully then this will be fresh to everyone, which no one will know when I make any mistakes. So we're all good. This is embedded JavaScript, just when you thought you'd have to learn C. My name's Dave. I'm a contract JavaScript developer. I'm not one of a game developer. This is my Twitter. If you have a strong burning desire to look at me tweeting about things like my chair doesn't fit under my desk and other annoying things. So ever since I started developing software, I'm going to add an extra line to this. I am a PowerPoint pro. Since I started developing software, I've always preferred experimenting with code. So, in a way that makes me terribly unemployable, I'm not very good at writing tests, for example. Or coding. I like fiddling. I like playing around with stuff. I like doing prototypes of things. But then, once I've done the prototype, I don't really want to make it good. It's just good enough. JavaScript is great for this kind of development, and that's why I love JavaScript. I also tinker with hardware, as you can see. So I've got circuit boards, I've got quadcopters at home, I've got Raspberry Pis, I've got a server in my upstairs cupboard, I've got networking gear, I fiddle. So I want to talk to you about hardware, but I need to talk to you about JavaScript, because this is Java. But I want to talk to you about embedded hardware, which talks about Arduino, but I've got to talk about JavaScript. I want to talk about LEDs, but I've got to talk about JavaScript. So I'm going to talk to you about Espruino. Espruino lets you run JavaScript code on microcontrollers. And when I say microcontrollers, I really mean micro. So this is a Espruino Wi-Fi, which is one of these things. And 90% of this board is nothing to do with Espruino. That's the chip that runs JavaScript. It's the. I'll throw this around in a bit, and you guys can have a look. It's tiny. It's just crazy. Why? Why would you want to embed JavaScript into a microcontroller? Why would you want to do that? I will tell you why. JavaScript, this is almost a copy of your slide. JavaScript is now everywhere. It's in the browser, it's on a server, now it's in embedded devices. It means that anyone can now write microcontroller code. We're no longer gating microcontroller development behind a language that was written in the 60s that no one really wants to learn anymore. If you can write a piece of jQuery, you can write code that can run on an embedded device. JavaScript is forgiving. It's loosely typed. There's no weird compile time errors. It's concise and predictable. When you ask it to type not a number, it tells you it's a number. It's not concise and predictable, but JavaScript is fun. You can do stupid stuff with JavaScript, and this is why I love JavaScript as a language. You can do stupid things. Espruino is great for embedding. It boots instantly. There's no compilation step. Tiny amounts of power. On the back of this massive thing here, there's a little battery socket for, you know, those round coin cell batteries. That takes a round coin cell battery to run a massive LCD like this, and that will run for a couple of days off a tiny coin cell battery, which is mental. This thing has got a Wi-Fi chip, so this will run Wi-Fi, and I'm not just talking Wi-Fi for this to connect to the internet. I'm talking that will pretend to be an access point, and you can connect to it, and that will run runs on 5 volts for days. Mental. If you ever try to boot a Raspberry Pi for an embedded device, you've got to boot all of Raspberry Pi. You've got to boot all of Linux, which takes time and a half. So if you've got some embedded device out in the field and it crashes, and you go, oh, just unplug it back in, and someone has to go and do that, and they'll go, is it back? Is it working? Is it there? Is it done? Is it ready? Don't know. It takes forever. I didn't actually succeed in plugging this in. Cross your fingers now. That way around. We can do it. Oh, done. That's it. That's booted. Job done. It's crazy. You don't have to bring up all this other stuff to do embedded stuff, to do embedded things. I don't need to know about my, display adapters because I don't have a display adapter. Don't get me wrong, Raspberry Pis are great, but I just don't think they belong in embedded devices. So we're going to try some experimentation. So I'm going to go into live demo mode now, and I'm going to make some horrible, terrible choices. We're going to look at the Espruino Wi-Fi and the Pixel. We'll start with the Pixel. So it's got an LCD screen. It's 128 pixels by 64 pixels in that direction. 64 megahertz. Cortex, blah 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 blah. 64K of RAM, so this makes things a little bit tricky. Half a meg, yes, half a meg flash. So that's, you store your program in flash, and then RAM is obviously the stuff that you're using at runtime. 20 GPIO pins, which are all under there. Can't really show you without putting it in a weird angle, but 20 GPIO pins. And it runs BLE, so Bluetooth Low End. So we want to draw text to a screen and draw some images to a screen. Demo, and let's hope it doesn't go wrong. So half the challenge is going to be how do I show you what's on here. So I'll talk about that in a second. The way you program Espruino is with its own IDE, which runs on a web page. Espruino is made by this guy called Gordon Williams. He lives in Oxford. And he's some sort of evil genius, because he made, there's 2 devices before this one. There's the original Espruino. Let's see if we can actually do this. Okay, so that thing there is the original Espruino, which is gigantic. And then he made the Pico, which is these ones. And then he made the Wi-Fi, and now he's done the Pixel. And one day, I hope he's going to make like a Espruino Ultimate or something that can take, because they all do different things, right? So the Espruino Wi-Fi has got a Wi-Fi chip in it, but no Bluetooth chip. The Pixel's got a screen and a Bluetooth chip, but no Wi-Fi chip. So hopefully one day he'll do one that's got everything in it. So that's not what I want to do. I might have to put this into not extend mode. Let's try this. So we're going to turn the Espruino on. And there's no connection between here and the machine directly with USB. We connect with Bluetooth. So this side of the screen is now a JavaScript interpreter. So if I say 1 plus 1, it will give me 2. You can write functions in here, like you would usually write JavaScript, and it will interpret and run them. So if I wanted to do something like this might work. Yeah, okay. So I don't know if you can see it, but the screen is now flashing on and off every half a second, just from a standard set interval. That's tiny. I don't think I can make that any bigger, not in an easy way. Well, I can try this.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to try and draw something onto the screen. So Espruino has like most of ES5, bits of ES6, and a whole bunch of other stuff that is Espruino specific. So all of many things. So what we're trying to do is show the screen on that screen. So bear with me. There's no native way of doing this, so this was part of a, that's my job, let's not look at that. No, new window. That looks convincing. Yeah. So, no, even that's not right. Dropbox. Not Dropbox. Project. There we go. Now we're talking. Not that. No. Alright. So, can we see this? More or less. Or bigger. How's that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep,
Fantastic. So, all of this is a big confusing mess, but mostly what it's doing is setting up the Bluetooth system in here to send all of the pixels that are on the screen over Bluetooth to here so that we can watch it. So if I take all of this, for example, flash, go. Okay, so I've got stuff on my screen over here. I have to unplug it and plug it back in. Okay, got stuff there. Now I do this. Now I do this. This is where it probably won't work. Awesome. Oh, good crap. Yeah. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen up there is what I'm seeing on the screen here. So I've hooked up a little accelerometer thing to this as well. So when I tilt this around, it's moving the blob around on screen. So the idea is, yes. No, no. Get in, yes, yeah. Okay, sweet. So this demonstrates the basic principle, and now it's crashed. So, but that's so. It doesn't look difficult. I'll explain why it was difficult. So 128 pixels that way by 64 pixels that way is how many bytes? 1024. It's a K of data. In a Bluetooth, in a BLE packet, does anyone know how many bytes of data you can send? It's 20 bytes of data. 20 bytes of data. Yes, good. Your eyebrows went, yeah. 20 bytes of data in a single Bluetooth packet. So sending 1,000 bytes of data from here to here actually turned out to be a freaking nightmare. But Espruino comes to our assistance because it's got built into it a compression library called HeatShrink. So literally, I'm just going to run through this. It's not going to make any sense to anybody, but we're taking the graphics buffer, we compress it with HeatShrink, and then I send a pre-made buffer of 19 bytes, so just one under the 20 byte limit, filled with 0. So we send that over, then we split up our compressed buffer into parts, send those all over, and then we send another buffer over full of 255. And then at the web page end, come on Dave, you can do this. View well. It's written in TypeScript, but there's not much choice. So another gentleman from Google did a lot of this work. I just worked out how to do the compression. But most of this is essentially using web BLE, connecting, decoding the packets, and then spitting out packets onto the screen. So that's how we made that work. Let's do something simpler, if we can. Does anyone have any questions so far while I try and make this next bit work?
Why did it crash?
Why did it crash? Because probably ran out of memory. So I got, how much did I say I had? Not a lot, 64K. So there's a garbage collection process, as with any JS interpreter, but it doesn't always work properly. So I sent Gordon a message to say, this isn't working, can you have a look and figure out why? He's going to take a look. But essentially, I think I'm leaking something somewhere. So it's my fault for my code. It doesn't just run out of memory for no reason. Somewhere in my code, I'm leaking a variable. And as we're leaking it a K at a time, it doesn't take very long for it to go, oh, holy crap, that wasn't data. So that's probably why. But I mean, in theory, if I turn it off and back on, it will. Let's see if that's enough. Yeah. Okay. So you can't see, but this is now recovered. So probably something to do with sending out so much data. It's definitely not designed for this. This is an extreme use case of why would you ever want to do this? Because I like to fiddle with things. There you go, it's working. So that's cool. The theory's good. So there's another optimization I can make where Espruino will tell me just the things that have changed since the last frame, and then if I sent that over the pipeline, then there'd be a lot less data. At the moment, I'm literally copying every single byte on the screen. So what else can we do with this? I should have just like put everything together in one go. I can't really do We can do most of this. You come here. All of you. Alright, so one of the things that I need to fix is that not working. One of the things I need to fix is taking the code that does all of the magic stuff to send it over the network and put it into a file that I can like import in. At the moment you just have to sort of shove it into your code and it's not great. So literally all of that 89 lines is just to transfer data from here. So let's see if it's right. This might work. Next. Flash. Draw image not found. Sweet. Always test your code samples before the presentation. There we go. That worked. Okay, so in theory, if I unplug this and plug it back in, it will do the right thing. And then if I come over here and connect, no. But I know why. Okay, so even though I've written a program here that's working on this device, all that it does is literally generate an image from base64 encoded string, clear the display, draw the image to the screen, and then flip the display once because backup. But that means that I've got nothing to constantly send the packets over the network. So what I need to do is set up. So that'll do. I need to do that as well. So all we're doing is literally writing a function that draws the stuff to the screen constantly, or once every 50 milliseconds. And then we're writing a on init function which the screen always looks for. So when this thing powers on, it's going to set an interval to call this function every 50 milliseconds. Standard JS. All looks sensible. Will this work? I don't know. Yeah, that happens. Unplug. Plug it in. No, it's down. Oh well. Yes! Okay, so it's there. So that's literally the process of taking a base64 encoded image, bless you, and drawing it onto the screen. That's fun. Not at all stressful. Can I resume this without having to go through it all again? No. Click doesn't work. Because it's Bluetooth. I'm spamming Bluetooth all the way over. Yeah, okay.
Shift F5. Not F4, is it?
Okay, I did images, I was gonna do text, but text is easier than images, and images cause me enough of a headache. Espruino Wi-Fi. So Espruino Wi-Fi came out before the Pixel. But it's got a beefier processor, 21 pins of GPIO, and it's got an ESP8266 Wi-Fi chip in it. Has anyone heard of the ESP8266? Or any of the ESP chips? Okay, so this company in China, I think, called Espressif, that make a bunch of Wi-Fi chips that have essentially they do all the Wi-Fi stuff, and then you just talk to the chip over serial and give it serial commands of like, now connect to a Wi-Fi or now become a Wi-Fi point. So if you've ever stayed in a if you've ever done any of these human things, if you've ever stayed in a hotel, taken a train, gone to an airport, any of these things where when you turn on the Wi-Fi on your device and you try and connect to the free thing and then it pops up a page going, do you want to register to be on our Wi-Fi? That's called a captive portal. And it works by doing some disgusting stuff with the DNS system. Does anyone know about DNS? I have DNS bits and pieces. Alright, so basically every time you ask for a website in captive portal mode, it sends you to the captive portal page. Now, if I haven't prepped this, we're not going to do it. Yes, I have. Okay. So I'm essentially going to run on this little thing a DNS server, an HTTP server, and we're going to spoof some DNS packets, and it should ask us to sign into a web page. We'll see if it works. Now, this is going to show up on everyone, so don't all take your phones out at once. It will show up on your phones, and if you all try and connect to it at once, it probably will melt. So take it slow and steady. So while the web Chrome version of the IDE connects using Web Bluetooth, to connect to the Wi-Fi one, amusingly enough, I have to use serial port, and the Chrome won't let you talk to USB serial, but it will let you talk to Bluetooth. I don't know what the rules are. Okay. So, in theory, I'm just going to see if it's working. Right. Captive portal test. That was convincing. That's DNS request. Can you see this? Yes, that's DNS requests coming in.
Oh, is that me?
Not working yet. Can I go to the internet? No, because it's just going to take over my 4G. Forget this now. Captain Port. I'm able to join the network. Good. This is good stuff. Who's got it? Ta-da! There we go. A captive portal on a tiny little chip like that. Is it not mental? Is this not crazy? Is this not the stupidest thing you've ever seen? Why would you do this? I don't know, but it's cool. It's so cool. Actually, the reason why you do stuff like this, 2 or 3 jobs ago, I was working at a place where we needed our React Native iPad app to print to a thermal printer, the label printer. But this was going to be sold as a package, and we couldn't say to the companies that we were selling it to, just put these things on your Wi-Fi network, because sometimes they don't want to let devices onto their Wi-Fi network randomly. So we shipped it with one of these as well, pre-configured to actually be a Wi-Fi network. So as you can see on your phone, this is currently being a Wi-Fi access point. This can also then connect to another Wi-Fi AP and basically be a portal out to the internet. So the iPad would connect to this, the thermal printer would connect to this, and then I could talk from the iPad to the thermal printer and out to the internet, all through this device, with its, whatever it is, amount of flash space and stuff like that. Did I write any more slides? I don't know. Yes, I did. I did write more slides. Great. What else? What else can you do with this craziness? Like, I want to stand up, but I can't stand up because I've got to press these buttons now. You could make an asteroids game. You could make the game from Google Chrome. You could make an oscilloscope because, as I showed you, it's got GPIO pins, so you can plug anything into it. You can make a clock. You can. I can't remember what this does. Oh, that's SMS. So you plug a SMS shield into it, and now you've got a thing you can put in your garden and like do things over SMS. You can turn it into a computer, because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do these things? Any questions? Go. Hit me. Yes.
Hardware particularly expensive, or is it kind of the same pricing as an Arduino?
It is a bit more expensive, but that's because it's Gordon's like money. So this is 25 quid. That's 30 million. But if you order, obviously, large numbers of them, discounts it. So, and then he's available like that. This is his full-time job now. So he's available like 8 hours a day on the forums to answer questions and fix my horrible code and do all sorts of stuff. He a whole bunch of ES6 stuff he just added the other week. So classes and all the fun things like that. But yeah, it's competitive, I would say. Yes.
So, any chance of like on-chip debugging, or does it have to all be done off-chip?
So, as you can see, while like people were connecting to it, I could see what was happening. Not that window, this window. So I could see what was happening. So I get console.log.
You can't see it.
Go away. No, go back. There. You can get console.log out of it. Can you get interactive debugging? Not that I know of. Might be something good. I'll ask him. That's a really good idea, actually. It's bugged me a couple of times. I'm like, well, no, I've got to do console.log. And console.log isn't always reliable when the chips are busy, because talking over either Bluetooth, as you saw, is sending so much data, it doesn't really have any spare capacity to send log messages. It might work. I'll put it in the. Are you on the Slack? I'll put it on the Slack.
How many users has he got? Have you got this sort of system? You have to take it. It started out as the guy's kind of sort of Kickstarter kind of hobby thing.
Yeah, he kickstarted it.
Yeah. Well, what's the user count grown to for this project?
That's a good question.
Very nice. He did all the badges for Node Config U a few years ago. He made these really cool digital badges.
Let's have a look at those digital badges. Hold on. Business.
They are now.
There you go. Look. So this is the picture thing, and he's like made custom perspex surrounds and stuff. I think he sent me some more photos I've got somewhere. You can get custom things. These are called pucks. So they're just Bluetooth and the processing chip, so they don't have the screens or anything else like that. But they're really cool for like if you want to give someone a puck and then let them wander around in a space. You can do triangulation with some other Bluetooth device to work out where they are in a space. All sorts of other random things. We were asking how many people are active.
Wow, that's quite a lot of messages.
So we've got about 2,000 people on the forum, and 5 are there right now. Oh yeah.
Is there any Slack?
No, I think he prefers forums as like a place
It's
to have.
slower paced.
Yeah, to have like a permanent log of shit. So. Oh yeah, look, there's me asking questions. How do I do this thing? I've got a presentation coming up, Gordon. How do I fix this? Come on. He answered all of it. He's a really good guy. But yeah, anyway, more questions. Anyone? Luke, you've got to have something. No, you're just blown away by the amazing. Okay, well if there's nothing else, that is me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. I've just had a little bit of a last thing before everyone leaves and disperses. Next time we've got one speaker who potentially is coming, but we were also thinking about doing some either workshops or sort of a roundtable discussion type forum thing, or perhaps even like this is not my idea, I nicked it from a few other meetups, but sort of a JavaScript cool wall kind of thing, and we can all discuss different technologies about what we're using, you know, where we sort of rank them on the board. Is that something of interest, or do you like to keep it as a talk sort of forum? Yeah, open to suggestions really. So yeah, come and see me after if you've got any other ideas, or if you like the sound of that, then yeah, come and let me know, because we'll do it if that's the case. So yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to Dave and to Mark, and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Communal language.
The big communal language.
Usually, yeah. It's like you put it I set the timer, and by the time I get there, somebody might have taken my stuff from the washing machine. It would be good just watching one of those little things, and then right when the machine stops spinning, you get a notification.
Can't you just set a timer on your phone?
No,
you know how long it's going to be. No! Was one of them, did you say like you can sense vibrations? If you can get a chip that can sense vibrations, you can do
like a tech guy, you know?
Yeah. Push notification services as well. You can get a push notification regularly.
Hook into Slack,
I'd like to
oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not too cool.
No, yesterday morning. People at work, a lot of them joined around it, saying my bit office
Poor little things. I drive them too long. Maybe.
So this is the chip for this one, and that does like all the that's my so you want and then the whole thing.
I don't believe in marriage.
It's so he was in
it's a very it's an old time
it's literally there's no oh yeah, the like
it's like, well, that one needs a friend. So I'm going to have this one comes with a brother and sister. So he's coming from you can pull on those half trees.
I get stressed that he's talking about on cooking time as well.
So this one, I work for 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah, I'd be able to go into it. Not bothered about it because I'm obviously
we can make an alarm clock with the Chrome dinosaur game where you have to get to like 100 and not turn the alarm on. No, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you found it.
This one where you just throw a ball at I guess that's why we sort of like probably on this problem trying to get up and like, oh,
I love these
You didn't do the right handshake.
Yeah, there's Netherlands as well. Did you change it?
Yeah.
I wasn't swearing at you, by the way.
Yeah, I'll see you later.
But yeah, the other one, I'm sure.
So there was one.
When you're ready. It sounds like you've got some great
That'd be like
so yeah, I need to do that is one of my KPIs. I'm kidding, I'm not.